Hello and welcome to Spread Book Joy. Today I want to talk to you all about my Southwest Stories project. If you're new to the channel, I'm Jack, and if you're not new, welcome back. And I have recently moved to the beautiful county of Devon in the southwest of England, and I've decided that what I want to do while I'm here is immerse myself in a lot of the literature, the non-fiction about the area, and all sorts of southwest focused reading. So I'm going to focus on Devon as well, specifically for parts of it because that's where I am, but I'm thinking like the entirety of the southwest, because we're going to be using this as a base to explore Cornwall and Dorset and other places as well. So I'm putting a little announcement video out to tell you a bit about it and what I've decided so far, and just sort of my rough plans, because I am a mood reader, though at the moment my mood is let's discover as much as I can about this beautiful county and its rich literary history, and also thought of the southwest in general. I almost called it my Finding Wessex project, but I thought that might be a bit too Hardy focused, but Hardy will feature quite heavily in this project. I'd already mentioned in my video where I talked about leaving London and moving and relocating to Devon about the fact that I wanted to do some reading around Devon, and people have kindly already given me some recommendations that I'm very, very excited about. So I'm just going to talk to you about what I've found so far and ask you for any other recommendations or anything else that you think I should look into or investigate while I'm here. So first of all, I suppose I just want to talk about the non-fiction and the history of the area. I really want to find out a bit more about the nature and the flora and fauna and things like that. So if anyone has any recommendations, I had one from lovely Amelia Barlow Books, on a nice little pocket guide to carry around with me to plants and for foraging and stuff like that, which is really, really nice. So if anyone's got any other recommendations, particularly, I really want to find out about wildflowers and trees and things like that, then yeah, let me know. The other thing is I am really excited to read some just general nature writing, and Alice from Alice and Giant Bookshelf, she recommended Tom Cox, and I've seen her read one of Tom Cox's books, his novels, Villager, which I'm excited to get into as well, and she recommended his work to me, and I discovered a book called 21st Century Yokel on his website, which I think is one that Alice has read, and it's all about Devon particularly. So he's local to Devon, he grew up in Devon, and I'll just read you a little bit from the excerpt from the blurb, because I found it on audiobook on Scribd. Kismet, it's perfect. So I think I'm going to start with that. But yeah, let me read you a little excerpt from the blurb. 21st Century Yokel explores the way we can be tied inescapably to landscape, whether we like it or not, often through our family and our past. It's not quite a nature book, not quite a humour book, not quite a family memoir, not quite folklore, not quite social history, not quite a collection of essays, but a bit of all seven. Sounds perfect. I love this kind of thing. I love a little reflective essay book, and it's basically it says here it contains owls, badgers, ponies, beavers, otters, bats, bees, scarecrows, dogs, ghosts, and yes, even a few cats, because I think Tom Cox is most famous for writing about cats. So perfect for me as well. So that sounds awesome. I also absolutely adored Raynor Wynn's The Salt Path. So if no one's read that, I read it last year or the year before, and that was her tale of walking the southwest coastal path with her husband. It's a true story, it's her memoir, and that was a fantastic book. So if anyone like anything along those lines, anything along the Tom Cox lines, if you've got any recommendations, particularly around about the southwest, Devon in particular, or the southwest in general, I'd be really happy to hear about those. Now, one thing that we are very close to here is the Tarka Trail. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with Tarka the Otter, very, very famous. The film, I remember when I was a kid watching Tarka the Otter and crying so much at that film. And I know the book, I haven't read the book, but that is going on my list of definite reads, Tarka the Otter, because yeah, nearby we have the Tarka Trail, and there's a town called Great Torrington, which I've been to and visited, and that's apparently where Tarka is from, near there. So yeah, I might that might make an appearance in one of my Devon diaries at some point. Some of the most famous books from around here include R.D. Blackmore's Lorna, Doone. It was published in 1869, and it is a romance set in Exmoor, which we've been up to Exmoor. We went there at the weekend and we visited the Valley of the Rocks, and I might insert some footage here while I'm talking about it. And yeah, it's set in the late 17th century. It was published in 1869, but it was historical fiction, set in Devon and Somerset, particularly the East Lynn Valley area of Exmoor. And we were literally there on Sunday. We went to visit the Valley of the Rocks, and we went to the little beautiful village of Lynmouth, where the East Lynn and I can't remember what the other river is, it's the something Lynn and the East Lynn, they meet and they converge there and go into the sea. Beautiful, beautiful part of the world. So yeah, Lorna, Doone, and I'm definitely going to try and seek out some of the places associated with these books when I eventually do read them. So Lorna, Doone is a definite must read while I'm here. Sticking with the Victorian theme, another famous book from the area is Westward Ho by Charles Kingsley. Charles Kingsley, I'd only ever heard of his other book, The Water Babies, before now. I didn't realise he'd written Westward Ho as well. The Water Babies is a very strange book and film. The film is what I know. I haven't read the book, but I remember the film in the 80s, a really, really odd film about children who are Victorian chimney sweeps, I believe, or Victorian urchins of some kind, and they go under the water and have this underwater adventure, but turns out really I think that they're dead all along, which is really horrific, but that's what I remember of that, my vague memories of it. So Charles Kingsley also wrote a wildly successful historical fiction adventure story called Westward Ho, about a young man who runs off to sea in Elizabethan times and goes to sea with Francis Drake. And yeah, so it's a big adventure story, and it was hugely popular to the point where it was set in Bideford in Devon, which is where it starts, I think, or its sort of main protagonist comes from Bideford in North Devon. And the Victorians then decided to build a hotel. Someone built a hotel and called it Westward Ho along the North Devon coast, and a whole town sprang up around this hotel, and it is now a town. It's called Westward Ho, and it's even got an exclamation mark in the title. And here's a pub quiz fact for you: it is the only place in the UK with an exclamation mark officially in its title. So yeah, Westward Ho. So that's exciting. I think that's going to be a really fun Victorian melodramatic adventure romp kind of thing. So I'm looking forward to reading that and visiting Westward Ho. It's supposed to be beautiful. And of course, can't read about the Southwest without reading about Thomas Hardy's books. So Thomas Hardy's fictional Wessex is the south and southwest of England. So I'm currently in what would be considered lower Wessex. Devon is lower Wessex. And yeah, I'm really excited to read more Hardy. Hardy, I have a very kind of turbulent relationship with Thomas Hardy. Very briefly, in a nutshell, I read Tess of the D'Urbervilles at school when I was 16 or 17, hated it, absolutely hated it, and blocked it out of my memory about everything that it was about. I just had this awful experience with it, and I didn't ever want to read Thomas Hardy ever again in my life. Fast forward 30 years, and I am now very interested in reading more Thomas Hardy, because of course I also hated Jane Austen when I was younger. I read Emma at school around the same time and hated it, and it's now one of my favourite books. So what did 17-year-old me know? Not a lot from the sounds of it. But yeah, I read Far from the Madding Crowd last year. I really enjoyed it. And then we just read Jude the Obscure as part of Misery May, and I don't know if I can say I enjoyed it. I am going to do a review video on it because I've got a lot of thoughts about Jude the Obscure, but I definitely enjoyed reading it with a group of people and dissecting it and discussing it and hearing all their thoughts about it. And I have it on good authority now that Jude the Obscure is his most miserable book, which kind of makes me feel a bit more confident in tackling his other work, because I liked his writing. His writing was really engaging, very readable, really readable, very soap opera like. I'm going to be getting stuck into some of Thomas Hardy's books while I'm here, particularly the ones set in Devon to start with, although for Jane Austen July I am going to be reading a Thomas Hardy. It's not set in Devon, but it is part of the Southwest Project, so watch this space. And of course I'm going to be reading one Jane Austen book which has a Southwest connection, and that is Sense and Sensibility. When they go off to live in a little cottage, that is Devon. So yeah, Sense and Sensibility fits in with this project as well, which I was delighted about. You can't mention Devon without mentioning Agatha Christie. I think Agatha Christie either lived here or had a holiday home here, and a lot of her books are set in Devon. So I've already read And Then There Were None. I read that last year or the year before. I've read Sparkling Cyanide. I don't think that's set in Devon. I can't even remember what it is set in. I've read it years ago when I was younger. But surprising I've not read more Agatha Christie in my life, because I have watched a huge amount of Agatha Christie because my mum was a huge Poirot and Miss Marple fan. So I absolutely love a lot of Agatha Christie stuff, and I just love that old golden age of crime kind of story. So surprising I've not read more Agatha Christie, but let's remedy that. So I could read And Then There Were None, I could read Five Little Pigs, and I could read The ABC Murders. I do believe, is it The Mysterious Affair at Styles is set in Devon? I'm not sure, but I'm sure the Agatha Christie fans out there, Kevy, Alice, I'm looking at you guys, you might correct me below if there are any further ones that are set in Devon that I need to know about. And there are some Agatha Christie related places to go and see around here. I think one of her homes is available. You can go and see one of her homes around here. So yeah, I'm very excited about the whole Agatha Christie aspect to Devon as well. I was also really pleased to discover in my investigations that Back Home by Michelle McGorian is also set in Devon. Who knew? I found it in a secondhand bookshop a few months ago after we had well, before we read Goodnight Mr. Tom. I saw it and I thought, if I really love Goodnight Mr. Tom, then I'm going to get this, because it was like cheap, it was in a secondhand bookshop, it was nearly new looking, and yeah, I loved Goodnight Mr. Tom. It was one of my books of the year for sure, and it will go down as being one of my favourite books. So I'm definitely going to enjoy reading Back Home by Michelle McGorian when I'm reunited with my books. I also discovered that the late great Hilary Mantel lived in Devon. Yeah, she wasn't born here, but she lived here for quite a few decades, and she sadly passed away here last year. So I read Wolf Hall and the second book, can't remember what it's called, Bring Up the Bodies, but both when they were published, and I never read the final book, The Mirror and the Light. So I think I might try and reread Wolf Hall and Bring Up the Bodies so that I can then finish the trilogy, because she's one of our greatest writers, one of our absolute huge literary talents in this country. So yeah, I think that's another one that's going to get added to the possibilities list, the Hilary Mantel Wolf Hall trilogy. I've had two very exciting recommendations from You Are Here Diversity, a channel I will link in the description box below, and they recommended, I'm sorry I don't know your actual first name, they recommended two authors to me, one of which I'd heard of their book. It's Jean Kemp, who's a British children's author. I'd heard of Jean Kemp and heard of their most famous book, but I've never read it, and it's The Turbulent Term of Tyke Tyler, which is a famous British author, British children's author, and I think that might have been a medal-winning book, but I'm gonna, yeah, definitely seek that one out. David Rees was the other recommendation. Now, I hadn't heard of David Rees, another British children's and teen author. Apparently, his books would have fit nicely under what we now call young adult. Wasn't a young adult category back when he was writing, it would have been called teen. And the really interesting thing about David Rees is he's written a Carnegie Medal winning book, which I'm definitely going to read, set in Exeter. I don't know if I already mentioned he wasn't from Exeter, but he taught at Exeter University for decades, and this is set during the Blitz in Exeter, so it ties in quite nicely with my Michelle McGorian reading. However, what was really interesting about David Rees is that he wrote the first two books in the UK for teenagers which featured gay characters, and then when they were debating Section 28 in Parliament, which is horrendous law banning educators from discussing homosexuality in any form in schools, which was absolutely horrific, and lots of people fought to have that repealed. When they were debating repealing that law in the late 90s, 1999, I remember these debates going on, they were debating David Rees, and he was being held up as an example of someone promoting homosexuality above other like relationships or whatever. So yeah, I want to read this guy's books because what a pioneer. So yeah, David Rees, really interesting. So thank you for mentioning this author who's new to me, and reading about their story, it was just like, wow, I'm really excited to read his stuff. So I'm just going to mention those things. I'm going to stop there because it's already a really long video, I imagine. I do want to read more about I'm a huge fan of King Arthur retellings, and of course if we go to Cornwall I really want to go to Tintagel, and yeah, I'm just so many things around here and in these areas that I want to read about. Also Poldark, I love a bit of Poldark, and I never read the books, so talking about like spreading things out over the southwest, but I'm just going to very specifically, just for the moment, focus on Devon, I think, because there's plenty to be getting on with around here. That's it for the moment. Yeah, if you've got any recommendations, mainly for Devon at the moment, but for the southwest in general, anything around non-fiction, fiction, authors that are from here, stories that are set here, legends, folklore, anything, please pop it in the comments. If you got this far, maybe pop an Otter emoji emoji for Tarka in the comments as well, and hopefully I will see you again here soon. Bye!